Good morning, Nelson County. Happy Friday. Happy June 19th. We are so excited to welcome you guys back to the Community Brew. Long time no see. I'll tell you, it wouldn't be a Community Brew unless we were having some kind of catastrophic technical issue this morning. So I think we've got it squared away. So you guys just be patient with us out there. Definitely drop in the comments. Say hello. Let us know you're here and that you're watching. We have an incredible panel with us this morning. And we were talking about fall impossible. Welcome back. So with that being said, I'm going to toss it over to Mr. Bradley and let him get our conversation started this morning.
Thank you, Brooke. So over the past few weeks, we've continued to engage in conversation around what's important as we return in the fall of 2020. We invited a number of parents from across the district to take part in this conversation today, and you'll hear from some of them. There's a few of them that weren't able to make it due to our technical difficulties, but we have four fantastic panelists that'll be joining us to talk about a few questions. The first question is, what is important to you as a parent as we plan for the fall 2020 welcome back? The second question is, how can we best care for and support our families and students as we navigate the short-term uncertainty of COVID-19 and returning to school? And lastly, we will focus on what questions might you have as parents that are important to you about our return in the fall. And we'll get it started, and I'll ask each family to just introduce themselves and whether students have attended or will be attending. I know we have a lot of students that were in this school and transitioning with this question. So question is, what's important to you as we plan for the fall 2020 welcome back to school? And we'll start with that.
You guys can jump in anytime.
All right. So introducing myself, Toby Lewis. I have a son who just graduated, Jack. I have a son that's going to be a junior, Sam Lewis, at Nelson County High School. And I have a son in the elementary school. So anyhow, I'm across all boards. And I think it'll affect me differently on all three of those kids through what's going to go on coming back to school. You know, an elementary kid is affected way differently than a high school, student. But, as we go back, one of the things that my wife and I was talking about is if we never understood the importance of a teacher, we do now. Both of us are educators or have been educators in the past. And with the tool set and skill set that we have, we still can't give them what they can get in the classroom. There's so much more interaction. There is so much more engagement. And, I remember back in the 90s when I was a teacher, and Wes was a football player, that, they had this, they were talking about in 10, 15, 20 years, teachers are going to phase out. They're going to have these computer programs that are going to teach kids, and, it'll be a different world. Well, let me tell you something. COVID was a failed experiment in that, I believe. Teachers are still viable, and I think we need to get our kids back into a school setting in a way that they can have interaction, in a way that they can work together, in a way that they can have meaningful relationships, because it's a big part of being in school. Now, how do we do that? What does that look like? Again, I've got friends in New York City who live in Manhattan who have a completely different situation than we do here in Archtown, Kentucky. We are, by grace of God and by natural situation, what do you call that? Social distanced. My closest neighbor is a cow. So I don't think we're dealing with the same situations that they are in a New York, and it is real. My friend tells me about his friends who are very sick, or have been. The husband gets really sick, and the wife, goes nose blind for a week. It's kind of crazy how it's hit and miss, but for us here in Bardstown, Kentucky, again, I think we're not dealing with the same things that someone in Chicago might be dealing with, or in New York, where everybody is essentially on top of each other. So I think in going back to school, if we use just a common sense approach, the folks that feel comfortable and don't have folks back home with compromised immunity, let's see what happens as we let them into the school. Maybe do the temporal scanner as they come in, and if someone's sick, give them that 12-day quarantine. Also have the NTI ready for those folks who don't feel comfortable going to school. There's going to be some kids that, again, live in a household with maybe a grandparent, or in a household with a mother who's suffering from a sickness or a disease, or a father the same way. So those folks who are uncomfortable, those folks who live in a home with compromised people, maybe they have that choice to do it in an NTI-like fashion. But I know for my son, I know for me, I gain energy from people. I enjoy talking with people. I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy working with people. For me to sit on a computer is really asking a lot. I need those people interactions, and I think my kids do as well. So again, I don't know if I walked all the way around this, but I think a common sense approach to going back to school probably makes the most common sense. Again, we're not in Manhattan. We're not in Chicago. We are in Bardstown, Kentucky. And it may offend some people, and I don't mean to do that. And everybody's got their opinions, and everybody seems to polarize on every event anymore. But I'm just trying to have a conversation here of how I feel like it'll impact my family. And if other folks feel differently, that's okay. That's kind of where I stand on it, and I'll support whatever Wes's vision of going back to school, or Nelson County's vision of going back to school looks like.
So thanks, Toby. I guess here, just to summarize a couple of key things, is there does need to be some options for families, and there's some choice involved in that, and we're going to have to use a common sense approach in thinking about what those choices are and how to best support families. So thank you for sharing a broad view of that first question. So Ms. Thompson, Ms. Hurst, think about what's important to you as a parent as we think about returning for fall 2020.
Hi, I'm Lori Thompson. I have two kiddos, one that just left the ELC and will be going to Foster Heights, and then one that's at Foster Heights. We have been here a little less than 2 years. Absolutely love it. I have two completely different children. One would go to school in a war zone and loves every minute of school, and feels pretty much comfortable with anything. And then the other one gets a little nervous about certain things. And so I guess my opinion on going back to school and how that would look is I just want to make sure my kids feel safe, that they feel like they're going to school and basically kind of normal, not, something that's going to scare them. I want them to feel like it's as normal as can be, but I also want them to be safe. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where I don't want them to be overly cautious going to school, and just an added worry. My husband is an essential worker, and so there has been a little bit of fear from one of my children, and so navigating that is a little tricky, and so I just want him to feel safe going to school, but they definitely need it. My kids definitely love going to school and interacting with their friends, and they miss all that. So would love for it to be able to happen, but I also want them to feel safe.
So it sounds like both physically safe and emotionally safe, psychologically, is a big part of it for you. And I think that's something that I think we probably underestimate is the extent to which we're going to have to, as a community, talk to our young children about this conversation and making them aware of it more thoughtfully than previously. Because it's something that this safety issue is more than just physical; it's psychological. And how do we have a conversation about that? And that's something we're going to have to provide resources to parents to think about, and we're also going to have strong conversations with students. I appreciate you sharing that, Ms. Thompson. Ms. Hurst or Mr. Butler?
My name is Vanessa Hurst. I have 3 students that go to New Haven School. My oldest will be in 8th grade. My middle son will be in 5th grade, and my youngest will be in 1st grade. I guess my main concern going back, of course, kind of going along with Ms. Thompson, would be the psychological, the anxiety. Right now, my kids are kind of removed from the whole news world. We kind of trickle in a little bit of current events. My oldest, Isaac, is more aware of things going on, but we kind of try to keep that innocence, especially over this summer. And I think just being aware of, the anxieties that can arise from some of the social distancing, the mask wearing, and things like that. Of course, to keep people safe, but at the same time, just to be mindful of what children, and not just, my children can handle it, but there's other children out there that are more vulnerable psychologically. I think just to keep that in mind and what would be best for all students would be my concern.
So it sounds too like I think you're acknowledging that we're going to have to think about how to help students be open-minded about the needs of others, have empathy, and recognize the diversity in our community. That's something that I think we're also going to have to go to great lengths to ensure that we're thinking about. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Butler, you found your camera. Good to see you.
Yes, it's good to be seen. I do apologize. I'm in an automobile this morning. Had to drive my oldest to work. She's about 2 months from having her license and being able to do it herself. So looking forward to that. Well, I'm Michael Butler. I've got a junior there at Thomas Nelson and a 4th grader at Cox's Creek Elementary. As far as my kids are concerned, my high school student, she would be 100% fine doing NTI until she graduates. That's just kind of her personality. My little one, she came in tears after the last Google Meet or Zoom Meet, whatever they had with her class. So she absolutely needs that connection, that human interaction that like what people have said that the computer just can't provide. And as we look at how to move forward, there's really no proven right answer. And so as we look, we've got to be aware that there's going to be some trial and error with things. I think so far the communication has really been just excellent, because that's part of it, is kind of knowing what's going on, knowing where the district is, not just guessing. And I think people are okay with saying, hey, we're waiting to see what goes on. As far as the split that Toby mentioned with doing, part NTI, part in class, another thing that we have to think about that is with our teachers, because both of those are full-time jobs, teaching in class and teaching NTI. And, how are we going to plan that out for our staff, that they can be 100% committed to the students that they're with in the building, yet also be committed to these students, that are virtual students for the time being. just a lot of gray areas that, you know, I think we can navigate, but there's no roadmap for it yet, and we're kind of creating that as we go.
Thank you, Michael. I think, you know, part of what I'm hearing you say is that we have to continue to communicate proactively, also acknowledge what we don't know. And part of giving clarity is recognizing where, in some cases, we may not have it. So we're going to transition to this next question. I think many of you have already hinted at this, but as you think about as a parent for your child, for your family, what are some ways that we as a community of schools can provide care and support over the next 6 weeks? What's going to be important as we think about the next 6 weeks? So we're looking at about 6 to 7 weeks. We want to be able to communicate options on July 10th, but we know that even after July 10th, there's a lot of communication that will occur. So what's it look like to you for us for us as a team of educators to provide care and support for you and your family?
And I'll just hop in real quick too. If you are watching with us on YouTube, we have about 122 community members hanging out with us this morning. So we definitely want to hear your thoughts out there. So just drop that in the comment, and we can bring that into our conversation as well.
Again, I think you know, building on what Michael had talked about. Hey, Michael, how you doing? I hadn't seen you in a long time. Yeah, we have to be mindful, and we have to make sure that we're, you know, prepared for our teachers as well. And that, you know, that's a point that you brought up that I didn't think about, but you're right. It's probably twice the work, but there may be other ways and avenues around that to maybe navigate through that with a less stress on the teachers. I'm not sure. But one of the things that you know, you talked about, how can we best care for families and students as we navigate short-term uncertainty? I think the communication has been, again, like Michael said, has been really, really good and well received so far. And we're trying to navigate through something we don't have a map for. So it's changing by the minute or by the hour or by the day. And we just got to kind of run with a loose back shoulder, I think. You know, you just got to ready to pivot or to make changes. One of the things that was brought up in the second question, how can we best care for families? You know, I know for us, it's probably been a little easier than it has for others, as my wife is a stay-at-home mother, which is a very tough job with 3 boys and a husband for sure. So it's not been as tough for us as some of our friends. You know, I've seen our friends go through this with issues with childcare and other things. So I'm not terribly sure how we can really support some of those parents who have those, you know, extenuating needs with the childcare if they don't go back to school, or how that may go. So, you know, there's no good answers for this. There's nothing that's easy about it. And again, we're on uncharted territory, but we have to just be able as a community to support and adjust, you know. And again, I think our schools are doing a great job. And we just have to get behind them and support them in the best of a worst situation. So again, that's a hard question. I think that's a question that's going to take time to answer, and it'll probably unveil itself. But there are certain things that we have to look at to be able to care for our families and those students who don't have somebody who can stay with them or be with them at home. And that's just a whole other mountain to climb.
So thanks, Toby. One thing I hear you saying is we need to know our parents and know the challenges they face, and have conversations that really allow us to understand them in a way that we may not. So we know that's going to take a lot of communication, not just globally, but also individually. And that's something that it's going to be a resource shift, but it's going to be an important one. So again, as other panelists here, as you think about what does it look like to provide care and support to for families and students in the next 6 weeks?
Me personally, it's one of those things. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so it hasn't really affected us as much either. But we do have friends who are both essential workers, one police officer and one a nurse. And once things started kind of going back to normal, and they had to make a choice, and a lot of parents, that's just hard. You don't have those options. And I think for all of us, it's just so new and completely out of the norm that I don't really think there is a good answer, because it's just one of those things that we feel like we just kind of have to go with what we're given. And how that works for each family is so different. It's kind of hard to say either way.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
I think one thing that we could do that's just kind of on the practical end is, and thinking about, my kids and the anxiety that they're having is, just knowing their like who their just classroom teacher is going to be next year. Getting that kind of lined out as quickly as possible, and as with as small of a district as we are, most of the kids, they pass the next level teacher in the hallway. They kind of know who they are. I think something like that would help our kids just kind of get one step in the right direction. And just as far as the family support goes, it's tough. I think people are nailing the idea that we have to know who we're dealing with. We need to kind of get in and get dirty and knowing who people are and do the difficult things. Hopefully through that, we can benefit some of these kids in our community as well.
So I think that, in a time of uncertainty, as much clarity as we can possibly provide, sounds like is something that gives a greater sense of safety, and also gives us, with clarity, there is action. And I think giving people the confidence to know what choices are out there, and also, in attending school, here's who's going to be your lead caretaker and teacher. Appreciate that, Michael. Anything you want to add, Ms. Hurst?
Just that, to kind of segue off what Michael was saying, I think having a clear plan and which the district has been great about communicating their plans so far, but just making sure that that's communicated with parents and students alike. And even as far as procedure and safety precautions and what that's going to look like going back to school for those that choose to go in classroom. I think just being very clear about a plan and what kind of precautions are going to be taken and what to expect, I think is going to help relieve a lot of anxiety for parents, students, and teachers alike.
Thank you, Vanessa. So we don't have as much time as we'd hoped for this last piece. Brooke, any comments we want to add before we go into the final piece, where we're going to see what questions might be out there that we want to touch base on?
Yeah, we just have lots of comments from our school community out there. Thank you guys for hopping into the chat. Haley Victory gave you a shout out, Mr. Butler. She said CCES loves the Butler, so yay. Miss Victory saying hi this morning to you. So let's see, we've got Stephanie Robinson. She says normal is a whole new atmosphere whether we like it or not. We have to consider everyone's health and risk, especially as numbers increase again. Let's see, Jennifer Logston, she hopped in and said, has any type of survey been sent out asking about specific concerns for return, the needs of each smaller community within Nelson County may even be different. Chastity Newberry, communication is key. Learning to co-teach with parents in case we have to go in and out of NTI will be very important for the success of the kiddos. And lots of love out there for our parents coming to the table this morning. So we appreciate you guys.
So we started about 4 or 5 minutes late. So we'll just take 4 or 5 minutes to conclude here with some questions that you, as parents, feel like are going to potentially on your mind and or on others' minds. We may not be able to answer all of the questions fully, but we can at least give a sense of direction. And just to reiterate, July 10th is our timeline for fully communicating options and decisions. I think there'll be some I think hints of things that come before July 10th, but we want to be able to finalize that message on July 10th. So questions might be out there that we want to acknowledge, but maybe not be able to fully answer.
Well, I think on a lot of people's mind is what not only does the school look like, but what the sport's going to look like going forward. What about the kids who play sports, and that's a big part of what they do and what they enjoy. There's not really been much clarity, even coming down from the upper echelon of the Kentucky High School Athletic Association. What is there? I don't know if there's any clarification. What does
yeah? I'd say so. I'd say with that question, I think there's a lot more clarity and guidance right now for a school, and there's probably less around athletics. And at the same time, in many ways, right now, the state, I feel like, is utilizing sports as an opportunity to learn about what this looks like. As you know, our student athletes at our high schools started attending practices in the last week. And some of those measures that have been taken there are, I think, in many ways, allowing for schools and districts and the state to look at what is working and what's not. And so I'd say at the same time, predicting what the sports season looks like is certainly going to be contingent upon KHSA's decision making in collaboration with the state. So I would argue that probably by July 10th, they'll have a more definitive answer. And that answer may be they're going to play it by ear.
Right.
I think the sports question is probably the most ambiguous long-term conversation. The school question feels a little more stable, and I think there's an intention to return to the school. So
I'm kind of like you. The practicing may be a social experiment to kind of see what happens and how it. I don't know, but. That's a big part of the community. It's a big part of the kids. But again, safety. There's a lot of concerns out there with that too. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah. Thank you, Toby.
I had actually reached out to several parent friends, prior to this meeting. Some of the questions revolved around what will bus transportation look like? Are we going to try and social distance on buses, which is near impossible? Also, are we going to do like morning assemblies? Are we going to have music, art, PE, all those things where kids kind of have to gather a little closer together in a classroom, and what that's going to look like moving forward? Of course, we really, at this point, I'm sure, don't know. But those are some concerns coming from parents. Also, if parents maybe can get some support or extra help or advice or tips on, teaching with distance learning, that's been a big concern. I know I struggled with my youngest. He does not want to learn from his mom, but he's a great student at school. So, if there's any help that can be provided for parents that are struggling teaching their own children. So those were some concerns that were brought up when I asked questions.
Thank you, Vanessa. I think one of the assumptions that most districts are working from is that if in-person school should look in the sense of class offerings and social interaction, it should look similar to what school looked like previously. I think the reality is there are precautions that will need to be in place in order for that to happen, whether that's face masks or temperature checks or otherwise, under certain terms and spaces that allow that to occur. I think more intelligently. And I guess the big idea that I would reiterate there is there's nothing that we're wanting to diminish. We know that we're not going to be able to have morning assemblies in the same way in the short term. We recognize we're not going to be able to have large group gatherings in the same way. But the other components of school, especially as we think about the learning environment in a classroom, while it may look different in terms of social distancing in spaces, we also know it should feel similar to what school has looked like previously, with the exception of those precautions. So that's again big picture, not all the details, but thank you for that. Take one more question, and then we'll transition.
I didn't really have a question. I just had a similar line of Ms. Harris, is that, is it looking like it's going to be as close to normal as possible for the kids to feel safe going to school and feeling like it is school and not just being scared, but hang out with their friends and to still be able to do all the things that they're used to doing. And play on the playground. My kids miss that. We have play set here, but it's not the same. So just things like that.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Thompson. I think the conversation around space, I think that especially in the beginning, there'll definitely be probably a little more amplified use of outdoor classrooms, possibly. Some spaces, some schools have easier access to that than others. But I would say the playgrounds will certainly be utilized as well, if for no other reason than the need for that sense of psychological safety and joy that it brings in the process of returning. Any last question, Mr. Butler, you're thinking about?
No, I think just kind of what we've gone over. Everybody that I've spoken with, the main question is, well, what about, fill in the blank? And, we're just not at the point to answer those yet. So.
Brooke, anything out there that we want to acknowledge before we transition? I'm sure there are lots of or potentially a lot of questions.
Yeah, there's the chat is hopping over here, so we'll leave we'll leave that chat on. I don't think we have enough time to go through all of it, but
so, I want to reiterate too. As parents, you can go to impossible.org and submit any questions that you have, and those questions, if they're local questions, which many of them are, your principal or the team, local school will be able to answer those for you. And we'll also use the chat as a barometer in a sense of some of those questions. But I think the answer in most cases is we'll be providing full clarity that first full week of July, and that's not that far away, right? So it's really about 3 weeks away as we transition. So I want to thank our parents for being a part of this conversation today. Your open-mindedness and care, and as you think about discussing this, means a lot to me. It also means a lot to our community, as many of them tune in and think about what is a uniquely complex discussion and issue. And we're grateful for you and all of our parents around the district that continue to partner with us during this unique time as we create the future in Nelson County. So, Brooke, any last pieces as we transition off of the Community Brew?
I think you did an excellent job, Mr. Bradley, closing us out today. So thank you all for tuning in with us, and we look forward to hanging out with you again very soon, and make it an impossible day, you guys.